Hey, what's up guys? Hardleg Joe here, coming at you with the Hardleg Profile for episode 168, Ghostrick Mill, the 2018 edition. For our monster lineup, we're playing only Ghostricks. We have 2 Skeleton, 3 Jiangshi, 3 Doll, 3 Jack Frost, 3 Lantern, 3 Spectre, and 3 Mary. For spells, we're playing 3 Pot of Indulgence, 2 Terraforming, and 3 Ghostrick Parade. Our traps consist of 3 Quaking Mirror Force, 3 Drowning Mirror Force, 1 Ghostrick Vanish, 3 Ghostrick Scare, 1 Jar of Avarice, and 3 Toll Hike, formerly known as Extra Toll. Our extra deck consists of 3 Ghostrick Angel of Mischief, 3 Ghostrick Alucard, 2 So Cute Boss, 3 Doulahan, 2 Wee Witch's Apprentice, and 2 Underclock Taker. Our side deck I'll go over later. So this is a mill deck, and if you're unfamiliar with that term, I don't blame you, because it actually comes from Magic the Gathering. Here's a little bit of trivia for you. In that game, they got a card really early on called Millstone, which has the effect that your opponent sends 2 cards from the top of their deck to the graveyard. This kind of effect came to be known as milling, even outside of the Magic the Gathering community, and a mill deck is one that tries to win by using these kinds of effects to get rid of all the cards in your opponent's deck so that they can't draw and thus lose by deck out. Ghostricks achieve this goal via Ghostrick Skeleton, who has 2 effects. First is the standard Ghostrick effect that all the main deck monsters share, which basically says they can't be normal summoned unless you already control a Ghostrick monster, and once per turn, you can flip them to face down defense position. Its second and much more relevant effect is when this card is flipped face up, you can banish cards from the top of your opponent's deck face down up to the number of Ghostrick monsters you control, but you can only use this effect once per turn. So, you get 5 Ghostricks on the field, including Skeleton, flip them all up, Skeleton mills 5 cards, then you can flip them all face down and do it again next turn. There's only a handful of effects that can recover face down banished cards, so you do this 4 or 6 times, and your opponent should be out of cards. Now, in order to accomplish this, we need to do 2 things. Summon a whole bunch of Ghostricks, and stall. Fortunately, that's pretty much what Ghostricks do best. There's not really any key playmakers or anything, so I'm just going to go down the line and explain each of them in turn. Jiangshi, in addition to the standard Ghostrick effect, says when it's flipped face up, you can add a Ghostrick monster from your deck to your hand, whose level is less than or equal to the number of Ghostrick monsters you control. If it's just on the field by itself, it gets flipped up by battle, then you get a level 1 Ghostrick from your deck to your hand. If you can keep it on the field with 2 other Ghostricks, then you can flip it up every turn, search any monster in the archetype, and then put it face down again for next turn, netting you continuous advantage. Ghostrick Doll also has an effect that activates when it's flipped face up. It says, during the end phase of this turn, change all monsters on the field to face down defense position, then summon 1 Ghostrick monster from your deck face down, whose level is less than or equal to the number of monsters that were flipped face down by this effect. So if you set this alone, your opponent runs over it, then during the end phase, all their non-link monsters go face down, and you get to replace this with something from your deck. If you can keep this on your side of the field, then, like Jiangshi, you can just flip it up every turn to get a free monster in your end phase. And its effect will conveniently flip all your monsters face down, so you don't have to do it individually. Now, the rest of your main deck Ghostricks don't do anything when they're flipped face up. Instead, they have hand trap effects. Jack Frost says when your opponent declares a direct attack, you can change that monster to face down defense position, and if you do, special summon this card in face down defense position. Lantern is very similar, except that it works for both direct attacks and attacks made against face-up Ghostricks. Also, instead of flipping the attacking monster face down, it just negates the attack and then summons itself. Ghostrick Spectre, meanwhile, says when a Ghostrick monster you control is destroyed by your opponent's attack or effect, you can summon this in face-down defense position and draw a card. This is actually the ideal card to grab if you just have a Jiangshi that gets attacked and destroyed by battle, since you can summon Spectre immediately off that destruction to both block further attacks and draw a card. Finally, we have Mary, who you can discard when you take damage to summon a Ghostrick from the deck whose attack is less than or equal to the damage you took. Most of our monsters have less than 1,000 attack, so unless you're playing against Trickstars, this will summon pretty much anything from the deck. Moving on to spells, we have 3 Pot of Indulgence, which is just a bit of draw power. It lets you banish 3 or 6 monsters randomly from your extra deck, and draw 1 card for every 3 that you banished. But you can't draw for the rest of the turn. Ghostricks don't really need their extra deck, and we play 3 copies of all our key monsters anyway, so this works out really well for them. It's not out in the TCG at the time of recording, and probably won't be here for several more months, which usually means I would avoid it, but I made an exception for this deck since it needs all the help it can get. If you do want to play this in real life, you can replace these with Pot of Duality, pretty much anything from the side deck, or just remove them entirely and put an Upstart Goblin in there, since your opponent's life points don't matter in a mill deck. After that, we have Terraforming, which searches our field spell, Ghostrick Parade. This says both players can't attack face-down monsters, but can attack directly if all their opponent's monsters are face-down. Also, if your opponent declares a direct attack, you can add 1 Ghostrick card from your deck to your hand. That effect isn't once per turn, and it still goes off even if you negate their attack with something like Lantern, which means with the right setup you can get several pluses off of this card while taking little to no damage in the process. It is important to note its final effect, however, which states your opponent takes no damage at all while this card is on the field. This doesn't matter since we usually don't attack, we just mill, but it's good to keep in mind in case you were thinking about trying this in another variation of the deck, or in case you were trying to attack, maybe all your skeletons got banished or something. Moving on to traps, we're playing 3 Quaking Mirror Force and 3 Drowning Mirror Force, which work just like regular Mirror Force, but with some fundamental differences. Quaking turns all your opponent's attack position monsters face down, and they remain that way forever, while Drowning shuffles all your opponent's attack position monsters back into the deck, but it can only be activated on a direct attack. Quaking obviously doesn't work on Link monsters since they can't go into defense position, but it works amazingly well against everything else since it clogs up the opponent's field and prevents them from summoning anything. Drowning, meanwhile, can be a bit counterintuitive since it puts monsters back into the deck, thus giving you more to mill, but it takes care of those pesky Link monsters by putting them back into the extra deck. And if you have Parade on the field, you can activate this even if you have monsters, since it lets your opponents attack directly. Moving on, we have our 2 Ghostrick traps. Vanish lets you reveal 1 Ghostrick in your hand, and for the rest of this turn, all face-down monsters and all face-up Ghostrick cards are unable to be targeted or destroyed by card effects. This is a nice little one-of that you can search once you have your board established to prevent things like Raigeki from destroying all your hard work. Our other card, Ghostrick Scare, is probably the best card in the deck. When it's activated, you flip up any number of face-down monsters you control, count the number of Ghostricks, and then flip that many monsters your opponent controls face down. With this and 4 or 5 Ghostricks on the field, you can pretty much control the duel. If your opponent isn't set up yet, just wait for them to summon a couple monsters, and then activate Scare to flip them face down, stopping them in their tracks. If they already have their board established, just wait until they go into the battle phase and then activate it. Not only will it flip all their monsters face down so they can't attack that turn, but it will activate Doll, Jiangshi, and Skeleton, allowing you to summon, search, and mill during your opponent's turn. Plus, with your monsters now face up, your opponent won't be able to attack directly with any remaining Link monsters they have, assuming you have Parade. Our only other one-of card is Jar of Avarice, which lets you shuffle 5 cards from your graveyard into the deck, draw 1 card. With how much this deck stalls and searches, you often get into a grind game. They can actually see you running out of resources. This lets you recycle those resources so you can outlast your opponent. Finally, we have this episode's spicy tech card, Extra Toll, or as it's now called, Toll Hike. This is a continuous trap card that says players must send 1 card from their hand to the graveyard to declare an attack. This can be amazing against Link decks because oftentimes they'll empty their entire hand in order to swarm, and without any cards to discard, they won't be able to declare an attack. Even if they do have 1 card left, that's the only attack they get per turn, and if you stall long enough to get 2 of these out, then your opponent will be in some real trouble because the effect stacks. And of course this is a mill deck, so you won't be attacking, so this doesn't hinder our playstyle in the slightest. As for the extra deck, the main card you'll be summoning is Angel of Mischief, who has 2,000 attack, 2,500 defense, and in addition to a cheesy alternate win condition effect that doesn't really matter, you can detach once per turn to add a Ghostrick spell trap from the deck to the hand, which is what we use to get Vanish once everything else is set up. We don't have any level 4 monsters to summon it regularly, but fortunately, it can also be summoned by plopping it on top of any other Ghostrick Ixie, of which there are 3, all of which can be summoned with relative ease. Alucard is your rank 3, it can detach to blow up a face-down card. So Cute Boss is rank 2, can destroy a monster with attack less than or equal to the combined attack of all Ghostricks on the field. And Dullahan is your rank 1, gains 200 attack for every Ghostrick card you control, and can detach to half a monster's attack. These 3 effects can be useful in their own right in certain situations, but most of the time you're just summoning them so you can go into Angel of Mischief. One important thing to note while I'm here is, in addition to the effects I mentioned, Dullahan and Alucard have the effect that if they're sent to the graveyard, you could target any other Ghostrick card in your grave, add it back to your hand. This effect activates even if they're detached as Ixie material, meaning you can detach them to activate Angel's effect, and not only get a search from your deck, but also recover anything from your grave. Obviously you can use this to get monsters back, but I find it's most useful for recycling our Ghostrick traps over and over. Our last 2 cards are just here because they're fairly generic links. All the Ghostricks are dark, so we play Wee Witch's Apprentice, and on the off chance that we get something like a Kaiju summoned to our side of the field, we have Underclock Taker, which can use any 2 effect monsters. Feel free to replace these with whatever you want, they're rarely summoned, they're just what I decided to put in here. All that leaves then is our side deck. Ghostrick Knight is a nice trap card, works really well against decks without links because it can stop them from ever summoning the monsters you flip face down. And Stein is a decent beater to go along with it that can search Knights by attacking if you want to go that route. Alternatively, if you find you're going against pure link spam, then the original Mirror Force can be an excellent tech to replace your Quaking Mirror Force, since it'll just destroy everything. I keep 2 more Ghostrick Vanishes in here, just in case I go against something with a ton of removal, and a Torrential Tribute to go along with it, since Vanish will make sure your face-down monsters won't be destroyed by your Torrential. Obviously, if you don't like any of the other cards in this side deck, want to get rid of them, replace it with 2 other copies of Torrential. In general, I find that this deck does slightly better going second, but if you know your opponent is going to make you go first, Floodgate Trap Hole can be an excellent card, since it flips things face down on summon and prevents them from ever going back into an attack mode. Finally, we just have an extra copy of Wee Witch and So Cute Boss, just in case you happen to find these 2 useful. They probably won't be, but I needed 15 cards for this, and I didn't think about Torrential Tribute until later. But anyway, there's the deck. I hope you enjoy it. If you'd like to see Ghostrick Mill in action, you can check out the main video. There I'll be playing 10 random duels against opponents on YGOPro, showing off how it works. Or if you're short on time, check out the replay video. Both should be on the end card and linked down in the description. Anyway, until next time, good luck and have fun.